Hey everybody, Doc Brown here with a quick guitar lesson. I want to share with you this idea I came up with for harmonizing the diminished scale using two voices. So I've got two examples I want to break down. Let's hear them before we dive into them. I'm going to be using the D half whole diminished scale for both of these examples, so it's going to sound a bit like this. And then the second example I'm going to show you, once again, using the D half whole diminished scale. Very similar sounding, but it's different, and I'll explain why in a moment. Alright, so before we dive completely in, let's start with a little background on the diminished scale. This will help explain these ideas and where they come from. So the diminished scale I'm using, like I said, is the half whole diminished scale. So that means it just repeats in a pattern of half step, whole step continually. And if we start on the note D, that's going to give us the root, the flat 9, sharp 9, our third, our sharp 4, 5, 6 or 13, flat 7, and then finally back to the root. So in D, those notes names end up being D, E flat, E sharp, if you don't mind, I'm going to call it F, F sharp, our G sharp, A, B, C, and D. Another cool characteristic of the diminished scale is it's symmetrical. So we can just move that up a minor third and we'll have an F half whole diminished scale. So we take that exact same collection of notes and just start on F. So that's the exact same collection of notes that we played starting from D now on F, and we have an F half whole diminished scale. And we can keep moving that up in minor thirds to A flat, to B, and still get those other chords and scales coming out of that. So for this one, this idea basically came out of a Kurt Rosenwinkel class I recently attended, and he was talking about an idea he picked up from the George Van Epps method books, basically taking a descending major scale and harmonizing above it using alternating thirds and sixths. So I decided to take the same type of principle and apply it to the diminished scale. I'm harmonizing below it though, using alternating major third, major sixth, minor third, minor sixth. And the reason we have access to both major and minor thirds and sixths is because of another key characteristic of the diminished scale. If we check out the chords we can build just off the root D, we have our dominant 7th chord, our minor 7th chord, our minor 7 flat 5, and finally our fully diminished 7th chord. So that's a good mix of major thirds, major sixths, minor sixths right there. So let's break down the idea finally. So I'm going to be starting on the third of this scale. So if we're thinking out D, that's going to be our F sharp. And this is the pattern I'm following on top going down the diminished scale. And for the first example I showed you, I'm just harmonizing that below, alternating major third and major sixth, and it ends up sounding like this. If you can tell, I'm just playing the exact same patterns, moving it down in minor thirds because of the nature of the diminished scale. So once you have it on one set of strings, you can just keep repeating that in minor thirds going down. Or we can move it onto other string sets. So we have and what's cool about this is the harmony that we're generating below ends up outlining a D fully diminished 7th chord. So that's really neat. So the second idea, we generate another diminished 7th chord below those same notes on top. So another chord that we can pull out of the diminished scale is if we just go a half step above the root to E flat. we can generate an E flat fully diminished 7th chord. So now if we were to harmonize the same descending diminished scale, but now I'm going to use minor thirds and minor 6th, we get a slightly different sound. Maybe a slightly more sinister sound. It's that same diminished scale, but a bit of a different flavor because we're harmonizing it different. I think that one's also a little more challenging to play just because the intervals are a little more spread out on the guitar physically. So, I mean, both of these are kind of difficult and will test your roadmap of the guitar. So they're great little exercises not only for that, but I think they're kind of musical and cool in and of themselves. Maybe you can use them in a solo. Obviously, you can use them over, you know, a D7, F7, A flat 7, B7, those types of sounds. Maybe you can use it in an intro or a chord melody, but I hope you get something out of this idea, or maybe you can just have some fun testing your fretboard knowledge with it. But for more lessons, transcriptions, and all that good stuff, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video lesson. Thanks again.